Hey everyone, this is Tom, also known as Scary Spikes, and welcome to another Star Citizen video. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you everything that you can do to improve performance on your PC when running Star Citizen. Before we get started, a very quick and special shout out to Azriel Razgris, who's one of our new moderators now, and he's also been one of our VIP Gold contributors for quite some time. A very friendly, helpful, and knowledgeable person in our community, always willing to share his knowledge about the game as well as peripherals with our community members and helping them set those peripherals up. Azriel, thank you so very much for dedicating your time as a moderator as well, and for being a VIP Gold contributor. Also, make sure to join us on stream Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays over on Twitch at 8 p.m. Eastern, and of course our Discord community, the links for which can be found in the description below. Well, without further ado, let's get started with this video. The first thing that you might notice is that we're currently at Everest Harbor, and this is going to be my first tip on how you can get absolutely the most performance out of your system and out of Star Citizen that you can without touching a single switch, dial, or setting. Making your home in one of these space stations like Everest Harbor, HURL-1 or HURL-2, or any of those other places where people don't typically go and where there's not a whole lot of geometry will have a significant impact to your performance for the better. If you go to places like Lorville, Area 18, or New Babbage, you'll notice that there's quite a lot more buildings, there's a lot more people, a lot more assets, and a lot more of a hit to your performance. Staying in these areas here, like one of these smaller space stations, will eliminate a whole lot of that and increase your performance without having to touch a single thing. It's always a great place to start, and this is my reason for making my home at Everest Harbor, although you could go to some of the lesser known stations as well for even better performance. For this next part, we'll want to go into the main menu, so hit escape and click on options, and then click on the graphics button at the top of the screen. We'll be focusing mostly on resolution downward here. All of these up here, like gamma, brightness, and contrast, you can choose to your heart's content, and they generally don't have any impact on performance other than what you see on the screen. Starting at the resolution, and I would recommend to keep this at your native resolution, so whatever native resolution your monitor is capable of displaying, that's what I would leave it at. Now, for example, if you have a 1080p monitor and you want to run the game in 720p, you can certainly do that. It won't be running as well, at least not from the tests that I've tried, but then again, I have a ultra-wide monitor, so it might not necessarily be the same. So this is something that can definitely improve your performance, but I would leave it at native for now, fiddle with the other settings first, and then if you continue to experience issues, only change it afterwards. Next up is the window mode, and we have a few options here. We have windowed, which runs it just in a regular window. We have a full screen, which runs the application in a full screen exclusive mode, as it's known by Windows. And then we have a borderless, which is the one that we're running in at the moment. Borderless is basically like windowed, except it makes it full screen-ish so that you don't see any of the sides, bottom, or top bars, but it is still technically running windowed. When you run in full screen mode though, a few things change. So this is one of those things that I would definitely change, especially if you need more performance gains and you don't do a whole lot of alt tabbing to change between Star Citizen and different applications. The reason why this is helpful is because Windows behaves a little bit differently with windowed applications than it does with full screen applications. With full screen applications, Windows considers it a exclusive mode, meaning that it tries to offer that exclusive app that is running in full screen mode a little bit more of its resources than it does to other apps running in the background. And for this reason, you'll find that you might experience some performance gains if you run the game in full screen mode. That being said, you might run into issues if you're constantly alt tabbing, and it might not be worth the minimal performance gains doing so if you're doing a lot of alt tabbing and you have a chance to maybe crash your game or bug it out, in which case you can definitely run it in borderless and you should be okay. The next is going to be the quality, and to be honest, this really doesn't have a huge impact. It's very minimal in my testing and even less impactful in other people's testing as far as I've seen. And the main reason for this is that the game is not completely optimized. I mean, it's really not even a little optimized at this point. We are in alpha, and that means that optimization is really not something that is at the tip of the iceberg. It's not really a priority for CIG to optimize something that's not fully built as of yet. And so because of this, these settings don't necessarily have a huge effect. In my experience, I've run it at high and I was absolutely fine. I've heard people have actually getting worse performance running it on low as opposed to medium or high, so I would start with high and maybe go down to medium, but those two settings are the only ones that I would recommend. I would recommend staying away from very high and low, but again, honestly, there is not a huge difference here, and you probably won't notice as big of a difference here as you will with some of the other settings that we'll be looking at. The field of view is something that you can adjust without having to worry about performance hits. It's just going to make your vision a little bit wider or narrower depending on whether you move the slider to the right or to the left respectively. You can go ahead and choose that at your leisure and pick a number or a figure here that is comfortable for you, and we'll move on to the next item, which is motion blur. Motion blur is quite interesting. I've actually had some serious issues with this, and not just with performance, but also with the fact that it almost made me sick. I really don't like the motion blur in this game. There are a few options here, but I just turned mine off. It definitely has an impact towards performance, at least for me, and from some of my community members I've heard exactly the same thing. So I would just turn this off. Honestly, it's really not worth turning on motion blur unless you can play with high refresh rates and high frame rates. And speaking of that, we'll be moving on to Vsync next. Vsync is vertical sync, or it's basically the action of syncing your display's refresh rate with the frames coming out of the graphics card. Now, if you have a monitor that is capable of putting out 120 Hz, that's not very useful if you're only getting 35 FPS in Lorville. So having this locked in might sometimes be good because it's going to keep your frames a little bit more steady. But in my opinion, because I'm able to get usually quite a bit more than 60 FPS in some cases, and even within the 50 to 60 FPS range in other cases, I usually turn this off. I don't mind the variable frame rate, and I find that it actually makes the game smoother and more tolerable, and I find that there's less hiccups as the game is constantly trying to limit my frames, even in places where I would get more than what I'm getting with the Vsync on. And so for that reason, I leave my Vsync off, and it does also affect performance as well, so you can try this on or off depending on your liking, and you can make a decision as to whether that's something that is going to affect you a lot or a little or not at all. But for me, I'm going to leave this off, and I find that I get my best performance with this setting off. The next setting is sharpening, and much like some of the other settings here, I don't find that this is really a performance issue, so you can go ahead and change this to your liking. Again, I keep it off just because I don't think I need additional sharpening, but you can choose to increase this a little bit and see if you have performance issues. I haven't noticed any, and some of my friends haven't noticed any either, but everybody's different. Everyone has a different computer, different software, different operating system, and a bunch of different hardware in their rigs, and so these settings could behave differently depending on what you have. For me, I've never experienced any issues, so go ahead and play with it and see what happens. Now, the next one is Chromatic Aberration. Basically what that is it's when the light is scattering from something that is very, very bright. For example, when you're looking at the sun, you might notice that sometimes the light is scattering to one direction and it's one hue, and it's scattering to another direction and it's another hue, and that's basically Chromatic Aberration in a nutshell. If you want to turn this off and just see regular old colors, then that's absolutely fine. It's exactly the same thing that I do. But again, I've not seen any noticeable frame rate dips with having this on. I just don't like the way it looks. So I've gone ahead and just turned this off and left it off for the duration of all of my play sessions. The last one is film grain, and this I have definitely experienced some performance hits with, so I go ahead and just leave that off. I don't like the way it looks anyway, even though it's not terribly bad like some other games that I've seen, but I'm just going to go ahead and say leave this off, and you should experience some better performance with this feature off. Again, your mileage may vary, but I'm going to go ahead and leave it off. Let's move over to Windows now to make a few tweaks and try to increase the performance of Star Citizen just a little bit more. See you there. Okay, so we're on the desktop now, and we're going to make a few changes to hopefully improve the performance in your game. The first is going to be exclusively for NVIDIA card owners, so if you own an AMD card, then you're kind of shit out of luck, at least for this video, but you might want to watch just in case you ever get yourself a real graphics card. Just kidding. Just kidding. Alright, so for those of you who are using NVIDIA cards, go ahead and right-click on your desktop and click on Control Panel. Once Control Panel is done loading, we're going to go over to Manage 3D Settings. We're going to head over to the second tab here for Programs. And then we're going to want to make sure that Squadron 42 Star Citizen is selected. If this isn't here or it's not in the list, you might want to click add and then go ahead and find your installed dir, which should be program files, Robert Space Industries, Star Citizen, live, and then in the bin folder you should be able to see your Star Citizen executable, and that's where it is located. But I digress. What you want to do is you want to move down here to where it says CUDA GPUs, right here. Okay, and where it says all, you'll want to scroll down. Now yours might not say all, it might say something different. There might be a setting selected up here, but what you want to do is make sure that you click this little plus and select your graphics card right here and click OK. Now, I've already done this, but yours might not look the same. And basically what this is going to do is it's going to force that graphics card to do pretty much most of the graphical work so that nothing is being offloaded to the CPU that doesn't need to be. One of the other things that you can do is you can go down to the power management mode, which is right here. And you want to go ahead and click on prefer maximum performance, which I've already got set here. Okay, and again, what this is going to do is it's going to allow your card to get as much power as it needs to do as much as it can. Sometimes what happens is when graphics cards are shipped and people don't fool around with them with things like MSI Afterburner, they'll notice that their cards are actually capped at about 90 to 95% power. So that means that because they're not drawing all the power they need, they might not be able to perform to 100% of their capabilities. Changing this will basically tell NVIDIA and the driver and the graphics card that you prefer performance and that you want to give it 100% power. In my opinion, even though we're not going to be going over this in this video, I would download MSI Afterburner or a similar program and make sure that your power range is set to 100 so that your card is getting the maximum amount of power that it is rated to handle so that it can perform its duties to its potential. Okay, so when you're done, just go ahead and click apply, and then you can go ahead and X out at the top. So the next step is going to be with regards to the actual executable itself, and we're going to be making a few changes here. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to right click on the launcher, click on open file location, and on the launcher you'll want to click with your right mouse button, go down to properties, go over to compatibility, and select disable full screen optimizations and run this program as administrator. Click on apply, OK, and then you can close the window. Once you've done this, you want to go back to your Robert Space Industries folder and head over to Star Citizen, head over to live, and then head over to bin 64, scroll down, find your Star Citizen EXE, right click on it, go to properties, under properties go to compatibility, and under compatibility you want to select the same thing, disable full screen optimizations, and run as administrator. Important to note here that if you don't do this for Star Citizen, or rather if you do it for Star Citizen but you don't do it for the launcher will not be able to launch Star Citizen with elevated privileges, meaning administrator mode, without itself having administrator mode turned on. So you'll need to make sure that it's turned on for both. Finally, if you have the GeForce Experience recording software turned on or the overlay turned on, you'll want to turn that off as well. So make sure that you start the GeForce Experience and log in. Once you've logged in, click on the settings cog up here, scroll down, and make sure that in-game overlay is turned off. And that's it. You should be done. Thank you so very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video and found it helpful, please make sure to let me know by leaving a like, subscribing if you're new, and ringing the bell so that you never miss a video in the future, as I put out videos once a week. Also, make sure to join us on stream Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 8 p.m. Eastern on Twitch, and of course our amazing Discord community, and links for those can be found in the description below. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye for now.